This is a short presentation about Margaret Cavendish, a philosopher, poet, scientist, fiction writer, proto-feminist and playwright who lived in the 17th century. Over her short life, spanning 50 years, many words were used to describe Margaret and her work, from the very complimentary to the less so. Such words as eccentric and outlandish and ambitious, mad, ridiculous, but importantly, brave. Margaret Lucas was born in 1623 into a wealthy aristocratic family, the youngest of 8 children. Her father died when she was very young and her mother raised her. She received no formal education in science or philosophy, but her education was typical for young ladies of her time, consisting of learning to read and write, to dance and to sing. She was, however, precocious from an early age, and having access to private scholarly libraries, she made up for her lack of education by reading. In 1644, following more political disturbances in England, Margaret followed the Queen from Oxford to exile in Paris. It is here that she met her husband, William Cavendish, who later became the Duke of Newcastle. Cavendish's marriage match proved to be intellectually as well as socially important for her. William was not only able to introduce her to the most famous philosophers of the day, but also to help her publish her future works. It was highly unusual at the time for a woman to publish on topics in natural philosophy, and even more unusual for her to publish under her own name. During Margaret's time in exile, she penned 5 works, including poems and fancies and philosophical and physical opinions, in which she begins to lay the groundwork for an alternative to the new mechanical philosophy. Several of her noted works published in this decade anticipated some of the central arguments later writers would make concerning natural and political philosophy, gender studies and religion. In Poems and Fancies, published in 1653, included descriptions of her theory of atomics told through verse. The work certainly made an impact. One commentator claimed that the book was 10 times more extravagant than her dress. Margaret returned with her husband to Restoration England in 1660, residing at Welbeck Abbey, an estate in Nottinghamshire. Margaret and her husband began to restore his estates, including Bolsover Castle. On May the 30th, in 1667, Margaret gained notoriety for being the first woman to attend a meeting of the Royal Society in London, a bold step which was not repeated for centuries, as it did not admit women as members until 1945. In 1666, Margaret Cavendish published The Blazing World as an appendix to Observations upon Experimental Philosophy, a serious scientific publication investigating the concept of matter and atomic composition. The Blazing World is a very early example of science fiction writing, and it's the first to contemplate new or parallel worlds. A fictional sci-fi utopia which tells a story of a woman who is abducted from her world and becomes the empress of a different one, where she proceeds to set up learned societies, study immaterial spirits, and wage futuristic-style warfare back on her own world. In Poems and Fancies of 1653, her atomic poem sequence remark that small atoms of themselves a world they make. This is seen as one of the earliest expressions of the atomic theory of nature, predating William Charlton's work by 1 year. Margaret Cavendish was one of several writers in the 17th century who used the terminology of dancing atoms, helping us to understand the movement of smallest particles that make up the world around us today. In Cavendish's atomic theory, all matter is composed of 4 elements, either in a pure form or mixed in various ratios. The 4 elements are fire, earth, air and water, and they are comprised of atoms of different shapes. All of the atoms have the same weight and the same amount of matter, but they vary in size or shape. When the atoms join together in harmonious unity, they form various parts of the natural world. However, if the joined atoms begin to disagree and fight, illness or change occurs. Again, unity and harmony are the keys to happiness. A healthy atom dances, while motion directs the steps. So what of Margaret Cavendish's legacy? Criticism and writing surrounding her life has often tended to focus on Margaret's eccentric personality more than her work. Yet Margaret's writing has stood the test of time, with many of her books still in print today. An article by Michael Robbins, titled The Royally Radical Life of Margaret Cavendish, quoted, "To Virginia Woolf, she was a giant cucumber choking the roses and carnations of an otherwise orderly garden of 17th century literature. Flamboyant, theatrical and ambitious, Margaret Cavendish was one of the 17th century's most striking figures, a woman who ventured into the male spheres of politics, science, philosophy and literature. Above all, she was the first woman to live by her pen."